For the following lecture on unions, I wanted to have a very clear example, so I decided to go to the characters table and split it in two and create two new tables out of it. And then I thought that I should show you how I'm doing this, because it's a pretty neat thing to know and it will help you when you are working with SQL in BigQuery. So here's a short primer on yet another way to create a table in BigQuery. You can use your newly acquired power of writing SQL queries to turn those queries into permanent tables. So here's how you can do it. First, I've written a simple query here and you should have no trouble understanding it by now. Go to the fantasy characters table, keep only rows where isAlive is true, and then get all the columns. Next, we need to choose where the new table will live and how it will be called. So I'm placing it also in the fantasy dataset and I'm calling it characters alive. And finally, I have a simple command which is create table. Now, what you see here is a single statement in SQL. It's a single command that will create the table. And you can have, in fact, multiple statements within the same code, and you can run all the statements together when you hit run. The trick is to separate all of them with this semicolon over here. The semicolon tells SQL, hey, this command over here is over, and next I might add another one. So here we have the second statement that we're going to run, and this looks just like the one above, except that our query has changed because we're getting rows where isAlive is false, and then we are calling this table characters dead. So I have my two statements, they're separated by semicolons, and I can just hit run, and I will see over here that BigQuery is showing me the two statements on two different rows. And you can see that they are both done now. So if I open my Explorer over here, I will see that I have two new tables, characters alive and characters dead. And if I go here, for characters alive, isAlive will of course be true on every row. Now, what do you think would happen if I ran this script again? Let's try it. So I get an error. The error says that the table already exists. And this makes sense because I've told SQL to create a table, but SQL says that table already exists. I cannot create it again. So there are ways that we can tell SQL what to do if the table already exists again, so that we specify the behavior we want and we are not going to just get an error. One way is to say create or replace table fantasy characters alive, and what this will do is that if the table already exists, BigQuery will delete it and then create it again. Or in other words, it will overwrite the data. So let's write it down too, and let's make sure that this query actually works. So when I run this, I will get no errors even if the table already existed, because BigQuery was able to remove the previous table and create a new one. Alternatively, we may want to create the table only if it doesn't exist yet and leave it untouched otherwise. So in that case, we could say create table if not exists. So what this will do is that if this table is already existing, BigQuery won't touch it and it won't throw an error, but if it doesn't exist, it will create it. So let us write it down too, and make sure that this query runs without errors. And we see that also here we get no errors. And that, in short, is how you can save the results of your queries in BigQuery and make them into full-fledged tables that you can save and query at will. And I think this is a really useful feature if you're analyzing data in BigQuery, because any results of your queries that you would like to keep, you can just save them and then come back and find them later.